prosecutor shouldn't be making decisions about whether to go forward. But essentially, Loretta Lynch was out of the loop.
Sessions did something that Loretta Lynch didn't do.
No, Loretta Lynch effectively did the same thing, but he did her one better. That's why I'm saying I give him credit.
That view is hypocritical.
All right, Greg, I want you to solve this.
This is pure bait and switch from the start. They were originally asking Sessions about whether he had discussions with the Russians about the campaign. He said in that context he did not. They bait and switch the question. So then they said, now they're saying, wait, he talked to the Russians as a member of the Armed Services Committee. Those are two different things. They bait and switched him. If they had asked him about that, he would have said, oh, yeah, I talked to all the ambassadors. I talked to 20 ambassadors. That's part of my job. I talked to them twice. I don't even know what I talked about. But it had nothing to do with the actual context of the question. So it was a cheap trick from a party that is bereft of any ideas. This is the whack-a-mole strategy right now of the Democratic Party. They are going to go after, for the next 4 years, anything that they can to hit this administration, even when it's full of crap. And I got to talk... What drives me crazy is how riled up the Democrats are over the Russians, considering that President Obama, when Mitt Romney talked about the Russian threat, President Obama said the 80s called, they want their foreign policy back. So apparently it was prehistoric under Obama to distrust the Russians, and now the Russians are evil. And then you think about the 80s, the 70s, and the 60s, when Russia was truly dangerous under the USSR during the Cold War. Where was the left? Where were the Democrats? Where were the liberals? They were fellow travelers. They were anti-communist. If you were an anti-communist, you were seen as some kind of prehistoric, beast who thought that there were commies under your bed. Turned out, we beat them in the Cold War. No thanks to you.
That just pretty much sums it up, and I like it. One of the big issues for many is the timing of the meeting. Catherine Herridge asked him about that.
With hindsight, do you believe that this is a coincidence that the Russians asked you for a meeting, or do you believe you were targeted because it came at the height of Russia's interference, and at the same time, then candidate Trump was giving an interview to RT saying that he didn't believe there was anything to the reported interference?
I don't recall and don't have a sense of any connection whatsoever about that. I'm not sure I even knew when we set up the meeting, what was going to be going on in the world at the time. So I can't speak for what the Russian ambassador may have had in his mind.
All right, birthday boy.
Yeah. So let's talk about the timing of this, all right? Greg's right. All of a sudden the Russians became such an issue. But look at when this stuff started to leak. We hear now about this. Jeff Sessions had meetings conversations with some Russian ambassadors. The Obama White House was leaving a trail for the Intel Committee. This happens 24 hours after President Trump drops probably the best speech of his career, of his lifetime, and is widely accepted as the best speech, and is widely accepted on both sides of the political aisle as the day that President Trump became President Trump. He earned the office that day, and now what happens? They throw everything they can to create any sort of diversion from that moment. In some circles, it's working, not in mine.
To that timing point, it lends itself to the idea that why the rebuttal was so lame. The reason why the rebuttal was so lame after Trump's speech was that they figured they had something in their back pocket. It was like, we don't have to handle this. We'll just do Russia tomorrow, and we'll take all the wind out of the sails. And I'm also really impressed with how old school journalistic action and concern is now happening. That didn't somehow happen during the Obama years. Remember, Benghazi became a punchline on a couple of Comedy Central shows and among newscasters that it was some kind of overdone thing. But somehow now every little thing is Watergate.
Yeah, and how many people died in this Russian leak so far?
Yeah,
none. Right? How many?
None that we know of.
All right. Well, here's more from Sessions on what he spoke to the Russian ambassador about. Take a listen.
We listened to the ambassador and what his concerns might be. We talked a little bit about terrorism, as I recall, and somehow the subject of the Ukraine came up. It got to be a little bit of a testy conversation at that point. It wrapped up. He said something about inviting me to have lunch. I did not accept that, and that never occurred. But I don't recall any specific political discussions.
Okay, so Danny's trying to give some specifics there, but it's also a little bit risk reward. Perhaps he kind of heads it off because there's a storm brewing, so he answers some questions because what you might imagine have happened could be worse than exactly what he's saying transpired. What did you make of this?
Well, I like the transparency, and I think it's a lot more than you got from others in the past. And I also think that there's so many different investigations, so it gets a little confusing. The investigation actually probably had nothing to do with the senator, now Attorney General, but about the Russian. He's the center of all this. He was the one who was asking and seeking meetings and trying to get information. And we know that the Russians were trying to meddle. So actually, let's remember, we're all Americans. The problem is actually the Russians and what the Russians were doing. I do think that because the Attorney General, the other thing he said, I think yesterday, Byron York reported this in the Washington Examiner, and when he had a chance to talk to him the other day, he asked him how the job was going. He said, it's super busy. It's a fascinating place to be, but there's so much going on. And he has so much work to do that I think that he did do the president a service today. And that there will be long-term gain for the Attorney General and for President Trump because of this today.
Well, if you see that guy coming, run the other way.
Right, nobody should make
What do they call it? An agent provocateur. He's causing lots of troubles, wants free lunches, meetings. Okay, what do you think?
I was just listening to Greg and to Eric, and it seems to me like you put a very strong political partisan overlay. The Democrats are not trying to thwart the president.
This is a political...
No. Here's the thing. I really don't. So you can say, oh, Juan, you're just being a Democrat. But here's the thing. I think I'm also saying, and this was a conclusion not just by, President Obama or some of these crazy liberals. This was a conclusion of the CIA, the National Security Agency, and the FBI, all put their good faith and signature. January 8th is when it was
reported. Why yesterday, late last night, does this now become an issue?
Excuse me, we have an ongoing, in fact, Dana's pointed out, there are ongoing investigations right now. Right now.
I'm well aware.
And what the conclusion of all of these intelligence agencies was, as it was put out back then, was that Vladimir Putin is trying to undermine public faith in U.S. democracy.
I know we've heard
now
this.
that's a lot. You say, oh,
my
who
point
died?
Was,
I'm going to tell you, no.
All of a sudden, this massive Russian leak happens at 24 hours after, or less, after President Trump delivers the speech of a lifetime.
Let me just tell you something. If there's coincidence, it was coincidence that Trump gave a good speech.
No, but remember, Juan, who was the most hypercritical about this Russian stuff during the campaign? I was the one that was talking about how if they can affect our elections, it's bad.
I agree.
But this is not that. What Session did nothing wrong. There's nothing going on. You can't put these two things together.
No, I heard what you said about his response to Franken.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You want?
No, I
heard what you said about his response to Franken, but he also said no. When Leahy asked him quite explicitly, "Have you had these meetings?" So that's a different one, Greg. And I think you have to understand. If you were on the other side of the political aisle, you'd be jumping. You'd be saying, "Hey, of course I would."
Only senators on the Armed Services Committee. I have meetings with. They will tell you the senators have meetings.
No, but I think the Washington Post checked and they said 19 of the 26 never have meetings with ambassadors.
Well, and let's be clear. Let's remember, this is not so much about Sessions; it's about Russians. Why would the Russian ambassador want to meet with Sessions? Because he was considered a surrogate on the campaign. I mean, also, but he didn't have business with him about the Armed Services Committee. He wanted to know what Trump was thinking in regards to Ukraine. And it seems to me what the Attorney General said to him at the time was, we're for freedom for Ukraine, and that the Russian didn't like it. So I actually think the Attorney General looks better this afternoon.
I think so, too.
Than he did even yesterday.
And remember, Ted Kennedy conspired with the KGB to ruin Ronald Reagan.
Yeah,
and he's considered a saint.
Didn't stop Ronald Reagan from saying, tear down that wall. Russia's policy in the 80s, U.S. policy.
Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch didn't recuse themselves in very similar situations.
So, therefore, Sessions took the high road.
That's the weak road.
Rolling.
Slow road.
All right, fine. And make sure to tune in to Tucker Carlson, our good friend, tonight, because Attorney General Sessions will be going one-on-one with Tucker. That's tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Coming up on Tuesday night, President Trump gave a very moving tribute to a fallen Navy SEAL and his grieving widow. It was a beautiful, heartbreaking moment, but despicably, some on the left saw it differently. The widow of American sniper Chris Kyle has something to say to them next.
This program is brought to you by Progressive, comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive.
People just can't get enough of me and my discounts. So this year they're getting a whole lot more. Fox 365, the calendar. Everyone knows